Welcome to the first chapter. The first chapter covers the strategical motive of bringing rooks into the action. Doesn't that seem very, very natural? Why do we have a separate chapter associated on this theme? Well, that is because I have observed that at the club level, or let's say at the intermediate level, players usually start an offense without getting the rooks into the game. Why is that so? Well, because when we develop, in the opening stage, when we develop pieces, we firstly get our minor pieces out. That is a theme which probably all of you know and implement with good accuracy in your games as well. But when it comes to rooks are usually developed after the minor pieces are out. Then you usually connect the rooks by developing your queen. And by this time, you're already into early middle game or late opening stage, and you forget about your rooks. You start making moves with your minor pieces and or launch a pawn storm and try to create an attack. And while all of these strategies make sense, for an attack to succeed, you need all of your pieces into the game. And this is why when you approach a position, I want you guys to think about getting all the pieces into the action. Your minor pieces are usually there, but the rooks, they come in the last, and so they deserve a special recognition. Let's talk about this position. This is white to play, and from a strategic viewpoint, I prefer white. Let's evaluate the position strategically. So while evaluating a position, I usually look at 5 elements. These are king safety, then material, activity of the pieces, pawn structure, and space. While these elements are not the only thing that decide the evaluation of a position, these are primarily the major elements, and this should give you a great indication of how things stand. Let's apply this framework in the current position. So in this position, the king safety looks equal. Both the kings seem equally well placed and safe. Material, black has a slight advantage because of the pair of bishops. So this is an element that is in black's favor. But when we talk about activity, I think it is clear that white's pieces are more active. The bishop on g6 and the rooks on a8 and e8 don't impress. The queen on d8 is fulfilling a defensive role, while white's pieces on a4 and b3 are fulfilling an active role. Along with that, white has more space and the pawn structure looks fairly equal. So because of that, I would give white a small strategic edge. Now in this position, we know that white is slightly better, and the elements that are in white's favor are space and activity, while black has the pair of bishops. So what hints does that give? It basically lets us know that what black would like to do is reduce white's activity or reduce the spatial edge. Now how can you reduce space? By eliminating pieces on the board so that there is less crampedness, or by exchanging pawns. Basically, you reduce space by exchanging pieces or pawns. And so black's idea is probably to play knight h4 and trade pieces in the position. As white, what we would like to do is maintain our activity and space, and if possible, eliminate the bishop pair, thus reducing black's strategic advantage. So that brings us to a question. If we want to eliminate the bishop pair, should we play knight into b6 or should we not? Well, this is a very decent move. There's nothing wrong with the move, But the problem is, after a into b6, we help black activate their rook, and at the same time, we have eliminated one of our active pieces. Black's pawn structure might seem weak for the moment, but as soon as they play b5, the rook might join in via a4 and put pressure on the pawn on d4. At the same time, they have ideas like bishop to h5 in the air, exerting pressure on the f3 knight. So overall, the consequence of knight into b6 has been that we have eliminated our active piece and at the same time help black open up the a file for their rook. Their pawn structure might seem a bit weak, but with b5 coming in next, there shouldn't be a problem. A natural move aimed against b5 is a4, but that helps black further trade pieces with knight into e3, and after queen into e3, black can exploit the weakness created by the move a4 with queen e7. And strategically speaking, since a couple of minor pieces have been traded, black doesn't feel the heat of space anymore, and with rook a6 and rook a8, both of black's rook would jump on the open file, thus giving them a great position. Their pieces will be active, and I don't think white has improved their position from a strategic viewpoint. Let's go back to the first move. So instead of knight into b6, white has a few other choices. One of the most natural moves is hitting the queen with bishop g5. White's point is that black cannot play something like queen d7 because of the threat of knight into b6, a into b6 and queen into b6, where white wins material. However, black can definitely play knight into d4, where the tactics come out in black's favor. Bishop into d8 doesn't work due to knight into b3, a into b3 and rook a d8, where black is almost winning because of their extra material. They have the pair of bishops, they have a d-passed pawn, and they also have an extra pawn in the position. Everything seems to be going in black's favor. So naturally, a move that comes into consideration is queen c3. White defends the pawn, prepares to gain more space with b4, and at the same time prepares bishop g5. However, in this case, black can go back to the original idea and offer a knight trade, knight h4. If white refuses to trade the pieces, black can play h5, covering the g4 square, and at the same time preparing moves like queen d7 next. White's knight on d2 seems a bit passive. I don't know how white will improve the position. f4 is usually not such a great move. Black can play knight f5 and even fix the weaknesses on the dark squares with h4. With these pawns being weak and the bishop aiming directly at them, I don't think black has a great position. White has a great position. Black's pieces seem to be doing great, and I don't see how white has improved their position. With every move, you should aim to improve your position or at least not worsen it. In this case, I think white has worsened their position, and so I don't prefer playing queen c3. If they take, we take knight into b6, a into b6. While strategically white still has more space and have a better pawn structure, the problem is that the pawns are mobile. Black can play b5 on the next move, but more importantly, we have the imbalance of opposite colored bishops on the board. Now, opposite colored bishops are a very interesting imbalance. Usually, if you are able to generate an attack, opposite colored bishops help the side which is attacking. However, in case you are not able to develop an attack, opposite colored bishops help the side which is defending and increases the possibility of drawing chances significantly. In this case, because there are very few minor pieces left on the board, white is not able to build up an initiative, and thus the opposite colored bishops help black get equal chances, and therefore I don't think the trade with queen c3 and knight h4 helps white. That brings us back to the first position, and that's why we should play rook a d1, get our final piece into the action while maintaining the pressure on the board. Let's examine a few possibilities. So how can black try and improve their position? I see only two moves, knight h4 and knight e3. Something like queen c7 can be met with bishop f4, where there can be a potential discovered attack with e6, let's say when we defend the bishop with bishop h2, or queen c3, queen d2. Now black can't play knight h4 anymore, since this pawn is defended and our queen remains on b3. So we can play knight into h4, queen into h4, and knight b6, where we win material. We now have opposite colored bishops on the board, but the difference is white simply has an extra pawn. That changes things completely. And if black plays knight into e3, we can take back with the rook, claiming that we have improved the activity of our position. Next, we would like to play rook c1 and lodge a knight on c5. Black keeps the pair of bishops for the moment, but we can anytime win one of the bishops back. And now just look at the stark difference in the activity of our pieces. All of the pieces are doing something meaningful, while black's pieces are only fulfilling a defensive purpose. Because of this, white remains better, and that's why we play rook a d1. Alright, so to sum up the position from a strategic viewpoint, whenever you develop your minor pieces out and connect the rooks, think about bringing the rooks into the game first before launching an offensive action. That's it for the first chapter, and I'll see you in the next one.